Hello. Welcome back to Live from the CRJ. I am your host, Tia Suggs, Project Manager of the Center for Racial Justice at Dillard University. What are your rights when it comes to immigration and ICE? What should families and communities know today? In this powerful episode of Live from the CRJ, we sit down with immigration attorney Brandon Davis and Dillard University CRJ alumni Ashley Reynaga, founder of Mi Gente at Dillard University. Today we're discussing immigration policy, constitutional rights, and the real impact of enforcement on communities. Ashley shares how Mi Gente advocates for the Hispanic community through mentorship, education, and outreach, including distributing Know Your Rights red cards to help immigrants understand their constitutional protections. Attorney Brandon Davis provides expert legal insight on ICE enforcement, immigration law, and what individuals and families should know to protect themselves. Live from the CRJ is a platform for dialogue, education, and justice-centered conversations impacting New Orleans and beyond. Subscribe for more conversations on social justice, policy, and community empowerment. Let's get started. Can everyone introduce themselves?
My name is Brandon Davis. I'm a labor and employment lawyer practicing primarily in Louisiana. I focus as a niche practice in corporate immigration, but not only that, family-based immigration, all forms of labor and employment immigration, and some forms of removal defense immigration work.
Okay. Hello, my name is Ashley Reynaga. I am an alumni from Dillard University. I graduated in urban studies and public policy, and I founded Mi Gente at Dillard University as well.
Okay, great. Let's dive right into it. So I want to just start with what exactly is ICE and what authority do they have within their department?
I feel like we should have had the prompt for the doom and gloom music when you said ICE. In the back of my head, it went dun dun dun. But ICE is Immigration and Customs Enforcement. Huge division of the Department of Homeland Security. We couldn't have missed it if we tried over the past several weeks to know what ICE is exactly. ICE is now one of the largest arms of the federal government, based on the funding bill and the significant expansion of that agency. And we know ICE is the very effective arm of immigration enforcement policy in the United States.
Okay. And yeah, it's because we have a lot of people wondering, like, what is their exact authority and what they can legally do and what they can't do. What are they like? How are they overstepping their role and positions?
I would stop short of saying, it's almost like they have general police power. We know that is legally untrue. But ICE has a broad amount of federal power to regulate federal immigration and immigration enforcement policy in the United States. And its statutory power in part relates to the Immigration and Nationality Act. And so this is an executive power, constitutionally executive power, and in my statute with respect to the agency. Since the first year, last year in 2025, all the way through today, the big debate is about the scope and the use of that type of power. I think that what we really have seen in the past 2 to 3 weeks, with the resignation of Secretary Noem, and now we're moving into the confirmation process for the nominee a significant shift in how that power may be used going forward. And hopefully it'll be used in a more sustainable and appropriate way.
Right. Yeah, I feel like that definitely, just watching her in court, her session, it was just kind of like she seemed tone deaf to everything that was going on within these detention camps and how they're approaching like citizens versus, who is and who isn't a citizen.
Yeah, I think that was the point of Congresswoman Crockett's oversight inquiry of then Secretary Noem. And the Congresswoman I noticed specifically asked then Secretary Noem about the protocols in the detention facilities, even as it relates to members of Congress who certainly have what I would describe to be almost a right to engage in oversight. I agree with you that it seems that there was at least some moment in time last week or so where the administration agreed that the tone needed to be acknowledged in an appropriate way with the shift in leadership.
Right. Yeah. And then bringing it back to home, what does immigration enforcement look like specifically in New Orleans or in Louisiana as a whole?
Well, what I experienced as a lawyer in 2025, from January 20th all the way, through New Year's Eve, was a steady increase in the presence of ICE in New Orleans. So, around January to February of last year, Mardi Gras time, you really didn't see a lot. By the time summer got here and all the way through the fall last year, I mean, we had the National Guard in the city. So we went from a situation at the beginning of the year that we were not occupied. And by the last quarter of last year, we had the federal presence, full federal presence in the city in a sustained way. The immediate response was a significant amount of calls for help in the removal space, in the removal court. Also, the business community had a serious need for lawyers who could help them to assist their employees with status or to determine how they could hire foreign nationals lawfully in the United States. And then, not to mention the impact on children in the school systems and outreach efforts among churches and other social organizations that were curtailed. It seems like now there is a new normal now that we're in the first quarter of 2026. I think that the New Orleans community is somewhat adjusted to having a presence here. But the impact in terms of people who were placed in proceedings last year is unreal.
Okay.
So since we're bringing it back home, what should students and community members know about helping immigrant neighbors, to stay safe and to do it safely?
Advocacy is a very important thing when it comes to students. I think that social media could be a way of like sharing information. Of course, I'm not if Brandon wants to correct me on this. I know that there's been instances in which we've spoken about like it's okay for businesses to not allow ICE inside their inside their buildings, but if Brandon wants to correct me on this, of course, let me know.
Well, I wouldn't presume to correct you, but yes, you're correct. That was a massive issue among university campuses in 2025. Let's just be honest, and in particular, even as it related to the presence of either federal government or protesters and demonstrators on HBCU campuses.
I was also told that you can't necessarily ask, for example, someone that's being chased by ICE to go into your like home or your building or like your employment, because then you would be told that you would be charged with like harboring a criminal. But I don't think that's actually how it's supposed to work. Once again, if you want to correct that, let me know, Brandon. But also,
I could not correct that. I think you're on the right track there.
I think also when we look at advocacy for immigrants, we're always looking at like protesting and speaking out loud, but I think they're like in the education system, there's other ways of advocating for immigrants. For example, students that are on a visa. I know some of them have struggled with like ensuring that all their paperwork is done with the university. And whenever universities don't necessarily secure all of the documentation or show that they care about the students, they're also showing the community that this student can be targeted. I think that for a university to like advocate for immigrants, I think that showing the fact that they will not tolerate their students being targeted is a form of advocacy for just individuals. Of course, I think as a student, I would push more for helping students like be able to reach the person that they need to reach. For example, whoever's in charge of the ensuring the visas for the international students, or if it's like an extra class that they may need to be able to communicate with one another, or if it's just involving them. I think this is a form of advocacy that forms community, and forming community is a great part of including them and making them feel safe.
I agree. I think that is a really good alternative, especially with everything that's going on. Like, how could we better support and lift up one another, on top of, fighting the bad guys in a sense.
One point that stood out just to me there is in the education space. We learned last year and all the way to this moment in time that kids that are in school now who are international students are going to need targeted support within the university system, or within the college system, and specifically student visas, the timing of when they can be available may be a little different now than it was in years past, now that we have a different enforcement government. I think an example of that is what we're seeing playing out in India now. So there's policy change where student visa appointments in India might be much more difficult to obtain. And that's not just limited to India. In many other countries, nationalities are impacted by the changes in those policies. I think also an awareness within the educational system of the increased risk that students who are international students, foreign students are, students who might be misperceived as international students, whether they're born in the United States or not. That particular population may be a little bit more vulnerable to negative experiences in campus life, just because of the tone of immigration policy now.
That's also true with everything going on, especially with, like I said, being tone deaf. I feel like a lot of people are being targeted that are citizens, natural born citizens, however, and they're still being detained by ICE, and they're not thoroughly looking into their records. People who are immigrants who have been doing the proper procedures of getting their paperwork and doing their visits, they're getting detained. It's just kind of getting confusing as to what is the procedure to detain someone?
Well, to really put it straight, I think the procedure, at least in 2025, was that the government decided to test the fullest extent of its federal power to identify every soul in the United States that could possibly be here without a lawful entry through customs and border. Okay. And then the government decided that it would, as fast as it could, and through any means that it could use, almost take effort to remove that pool of people from the country as fast as it possibly could. And I mean, in 1 year, it seems that the government was very effective in doing two things: effectively sealing off our southern border, and then also really testing as much of its power, as opposed to authority, but power, to manage that objective in a year, and it was very effective in doing so. And without judging the outcome, it seems like its mission was accomplished. Now that there's a change in leadership, or now that the Senate presumably will confirm and will have a new secretary very, very soon of the agency, assuming there's a change in leadership, I wonder about how methodical and regulated the government will become in maintaining what the president has explained his policy is, now that the shock and awe portion of it is over. And so we still have 3 years in this administration. And if this was year one, now that we have a change of the guard and maybe a chance to reassess, I do worry about what can continue to play out.
Right. We don't know the next guard, what they're.
Yeah, I think the message is it's not over.
Yeah, because we're still under there. But it is something to think about how they probably, I mean, they tore her up during that session. So I feel like maybe they would pick someone at least hopefully ideal that can at least communicate these things better, or something positive out of this. But what policy changes do you think should be created that would have more equitable outcomes in all of this?
From my perspective, listen, this country has, I've practiced immigration law in the labor and corporate space for almost 20 years. And for my entire career, there has been a discussion about comprehensive immigration reform in the United States of America. We've never had comprehensive immigration reform in the United States of America, at least not in the way that we've discussed it in the most recent times, past 20 to 25 years. And because we missed the opportunity as a nation to manage that issue, I think that's why we see what is playing out now. So the policy change really needs to be, there needs to be a policy that this nation would effectuate comprehensive immigration reform policy. I think that pie in the sky policy means that there is a globally equitable policy for the admission of foreign nationals who want to do business, seek education, or have families in the United States of America. And the equitable portion of that policy as I see it, needs to account for the fact that peoples with an S and nations from all over the globe really should be treated fairly. And so currently we have a system where a significant portion of Africa is banned from entering the United States at all. And in comparison, there are other countries on the globe who have much more favorable immigration treatment vis-a-vis their standing with the United States. And I'd like to see that change because that's something that this nation could do that would be good globally. I think that employers need to have a much more fair system to identify global talent that wants to come to the United States and to enable the US labor market to truly take the advantage of global talent in an appropriate way that makes sense, that's regulated, and that is lawful. And then I think the last thing that I would like to see in policy changes are an immigration system, that is primarily controlled by government and lawyers, but that yields to specific national concerns. For example, higher education, healthcare, agribusiness and food supply. In some cases, religious organizations. Those are four big overlapping common interest things or concepts that are global in their scale. And so I think we need an immigration policy in this nation that it understands that our health, our education, our food supply, and our spirituality, our religious practice. Those are the kind of big things that are common across all mankind. And so we need policies that will protect those industries or those stakeholders in this global space. Here's a tangible example of that. Massive focus in the United States now, especially in the minority community, focused on land ownership, farming, whether urban farming or traditional rural farming, and developing communities of legacy and sustainability and things like that. And the food supply system in this country is supported by the international community. There's no way around it. And food and trade, it's an international enterprise. And so it makes sense that the government would give exceptions to agribusiness stakeholders or students who have agri-science or STEM fields as their disciplines. And so those are the type of progressive things that I'd like to see in policy changes.
I have a question. My question is, why is it that migrants or people are being held in detention centers if it's a civil issue and not a criminal one? From my understanding, most civil issues don't end in arrest. I was wondering if you could highlight in that. I know that there's a book called Immigration Detention Inc. by Nancy Hiemsta, I believe, and it speaks about profit being made at those detention centers. Is this true? Or do you think that is one of the main reasons why it's being enforced this way, that immigration is being enforced this way?
I don't have any tangible examples of profiteering in detention facilities. Which does not mean that I've seen my share of vending machines and the high telephone tolls that you have to pay when you visit clients who are detained. I think big picture, presumably, if you're in removal proceedings, if you're in detention, you're in there because the government believes and is alleging that you are not lawfully present in the United States or you were not lawfully admitted to the United States. And so correct a purely civil infraction that is contested in a civil matter should not normally lead to an immigration detention. Were you thinking like in my mind you meant like a civil matter like an automobile negligence, like a car crash accident or something like that?
Yes.
So I think that unless for the most part people who wind up in detention or removal proceedings now, you have an encounter with police. It's a traffic stop, or you don't have a brake tag, even though we're getting the QR code now, the governor announced in Louisiana. And so I can see if you have a domestic incident and you call the police, so that, and then the police come and then see or have cause to know about your status, and maybe that's the way you wind up in removal proceedings. Otherwise, purely civil matters shouldn't trigger it.
Thank you.
So I guess this question can be for the both of you. What should young people understand about immigration and human rights? I know we've already talked about a lot of stuff, but is there anything that we haven't covered or you might not have said that young people should know?
The thing that immediately came to my mind that I at least I have not said, and I think that young people, and young for me is, you know, eight college age, 18 to 25, generally. Um, it's important to be aware of immigration policy just from a global perspective. And what I mean by that is young people really should be focused on why other young people from around the world want, even still to this day, want to come to the United States to go to college or go to grad school or law school or professional school, whatever it is. Why that is, and 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 what American youth, it may be missing, in that equation. And then the second thing is, then young people need to understand the value that they can identify outside of the United States. And so one of the biggest things, one of the best things that I think that our youth in our community right now can do, but folks who are in college, is understand your international value, and you become an expat or you immigrate. And when I say you immigrate, I don't mean that literally or in the legal sense, but it's better that we all be aware of the global opportunities that are available to do whatever it is that we're doing and that we think that we're good at. You can do it globally, and you can do that without leaving the United States. So that's what I think is important.
Okay, so Ashley, what inspired you to advocate for immigrant rights at Dillard's campus, at Dillard University, and found the Mi Gente organization?
Well, I am a child of an immigrant mother. She is the child of a U.S. citizen, but my grandfather is also an immigrant. I'm part of the first generation in my family to be born as a U.S. citizen. My mother always told me that I had to help my community, and often she sent me to translate for different people who did not speak or read English. I remember as a child going to translate at doctor's appointments and at school for other parents, and I think one of the most memorable things that happened to me or for me was when she asked me to translate for a man that worked in plumbing. He had a shard of metal in his eye. I remember I was just happy to miss school and get McDonald's afterward. And it wasn't until they said that he would have to have surgery, that I finally understood how serious it was. I had to wake up at 5, 6 a.m. to go with them to the doctor and help them fill up the paperwork. I think one of the most worrisome things for the couple might have been that the idea of being denied medical procedures. And I remember that the doctors mentioned that if this was a work injury, that the employer was responsible for paying for the man to get the surgery. And I remember that the wife kept saying she was thankful that I said yes to go on with them because they would be lost without me. And I was like, I think it would have been okay. I know people are out here to help. And how they always bring the wife in after a surgery to tell them how it went and what a person has to do to get a little bit better. Well, they sent me, and I was stressed. I was 12 and 13 years old, and I was in the middle of the husband and doctor because only one person was allowed in the room, and I was terrified the entire time that I would translate something wrong and then something extreme would happen afterwards. But thankfully, everything went well. I think another instance that I remember advocating for a person who needed, she needed to put a restraining order on her husband. And again, I was still young. I'm still in high school and I have no idea how to do restraining orders, but I traveled with her and I helped her through the procedure. I know I was, a little scared of going into the police, office. So I could only imagine, what she was going through. I actually work for a police department now, but even then it's like, I'm a little iffy about it. I think advocating for immigrants has come as a part of my upbringing. It was my mother who raised me to do this, but I think I didn't appreciate, not necessarily not appreciate it, but I was like, wow, I have to do this. And then it just became like a big part of who I am. Um, and it just goes far. I think advocating for people, it goes farther from what is going on right now. I think advocacy isn't just about protesting what is going on now with ICE or in the detention centers. It goes farther in ensuring people's everyday needs are met. I think one of the biggest tactics of this administration is that we dehumanize people so that we can treat them as less of human. But by being a part of their everyday needs, we are able to continue viewing others as human. And this is what community is. And this was my goal in creating Mi Gente. I wanted a community to form within Dillard that would support international and Hispanic students to connect one another and to help others understand us.
Wow, that's really powerful. You were able to take something that you've been doing since a little girl and it's kind of steered your career path.
Yeah, I think advocating is like you being part of a community and supporting one another. I think that,
Absolutely.
like just being a friend is a form of advocacy. I think we always look at it as the protest, but really helping a person that just needs somebody else to be with them at that moment is a big thing too. And I think this is something that everybody could do.
All right, all around support.
Yes.
So my next question is for Ashley. What did you learn during your work researching immigration policies? Because I know when you were at Dillard, that was something that you were definitely involved with in our internship program with the center.
Yes. So my internship was with Numbers USA. And I think one of the biggest parts or one of the biggest things that I learned was that immigration policies are changing all of the time, or more so like the enforcement of them. Additionally, the process often to obtain visa is very long and difficult. And it's very difficult to make an appointment. So there are ways of making an appointment when you are in your home country, but it's not always as effective. And the process is very long. Like the waiting period is very long to even see if you might get approved or in if like sorry. Can I restart my question? My answer?
Yes.
For one, the immigration policies are changing all the time, and so does the enforcement of them. Additionally, the process of obtaining a visa is often very long and very difficult it's very difficult to even make an appointment. It takes years for someone to be approved, and then once your visa is expired, you must go through the process once again. In the end, it's a very long waiting game to see if you might get approved, and with some individuals, you don't even um, get that after spending so much money on the process. You can make appointments in your home country. I believe there was like a website that where they could ask for an appointment, but they actually ended up canceling that now with the new administration because they said it was not as effective. I remember personally, I remember a story of someone who after 10 years got approved and the letter was sent to the family member, like after going through the entire process. But like I think it was the brother who was vouching for him, vouching for their brother. So it was a brother vouching for the brother. And the brother, like the person that he was vouching for, he had died. So again, it's a very long waiting process of if it's going to happen and when it's going to happen, you know. And there's a lot of people trying to do it the right way, as they say.
Right. Yeah, I know it's in this climate, it's kind of hard to know what's the right and wrong way about going about these things. But the work that you're doing and the fact that it's something that you seem to have been doing since you were a younger little girl, I hope that the future is more, you know, what you're dreaming of.
I do, and I hope to see a lot of changes. I think it would be very good if there was like a very standard way of doing it, or like if enforcement was more standard or more structured.
Mhm.
I think if the process was a little bit speedier, or there was then perhaps it would be good. I know some visas they work as lotteries too. So I think I would like a little bit more changes to see like there's talented people that want to come to the United States, and I think the United States would benefit from them.
Definitely. I mean that's how our country is built.
Yes. I think the Winter Olympics, I think a lot of them were either child of immigrants or immigrants themselves. So I was watching the Olympics and I'm like, yeah, like even in the Olympics, we have immigrants that want to show the greatness of the United States. So
Exactly. Exactly. And we should be Bad Bunny, the Super Bowl performance was amazing. I loved it. I feel like it just
we
shows
love
how
it too.
cultural this country is because where that's what we are. Like that's what makes us unique from the other countries that are more, you know, within their people. But our country is mixed with so many different people and cultures that brought so many great, beautiful things, especially to our city in New Orleans. Like without other cultures being mixed in, we wouldn't have our distinct culture. So I feel like it's definitely worth this fight and bringing awareness. And that's why I appreciate you setting up this organization at Dillard, doing the internship with Numbers USA, just kind of broadening your horizons on where this can go and learning more and more about what's going on, you know, and keeping up.
Thank you.
So I remember when you came, because she graduated, she's a Dillard alum, but when you were there, we did the red card distribution.
Yes, I think this was something that was very important, mainly because they highlight the rights of immigrants. I think one big misconception that I've seen was the fact that immigrants don't, if somebody that's not a US citizen does not have rights here in the United States. And I think that regardless of what is going on, only the truth, the truth is that they do have rights and they have to be treated ethically despite how they're being treated at the moment. Whether their dignity is being violated or not. Um, I just think it was very important, especially for my Mi Gente to go out and give out this cards because it felt like we were helping out to people that felt like they had no help.
Right. And I think that the best thing we can do outside of posting and social media is providing resources, which is what was so great about the red cards. It was simple, easy to fit in your wallet. But we definitely appreciate you guys coming on today, this morning, to talk about this with us. This is very important in today's climate, knowing your rights and what's available to you. So I do want to end the conversation with any resources or contact information for viewers, so we could be able to provide resources in our comment description as well.
Sure. The American Immigration Lawyers Association has a really good, and it's updated often, know your rights kind of waiver or flyer, and you can just type that in or Google it, and that's easily accessible. And that's been kind of a real time update of just the general what you need to know operating in this environment.
And you said American Immigration. What else?
Yeah, the American Immigration Lawyers Association is this huge organization of lawyers that really practice immigration law, and they have like all of these immigration resources and tools, and they have this know your rights just way a flyer, and it's a really just good handy little resource, and you can kind of find like the PDF or the QR code links online if you just type that in. And so
Okay.
that's a good, just basic, handy kind of, this is the lay of the land type of know your rights. And this is my relationship with police generally.
Okay, great. I'll make sure to include them in our bio. Ashley, do you have any resources? I know we have Mi Gente on Dillard's campus. Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining us today. I know we wanted to wrap it up in 30 minutes. I think we got just about that.
Well, listen, this was good. Thank you all so much for inviting me. Ashley, it was a pleasure to meet you. And man, your work sounds so good. Please keep up the good work.
Thank you.
You both are doing just excellent work.